Yo, what up? It's Teddy, Caravan Crypto, and we're gonna get into something a little touchy for some people, but I think it's something worth talking about. And on this channel, we want to explore the possibilities of blockchain and Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And I'm just gonna give you my perspective, my thoughts. I am just a random guy on YouTube. I am not a financial advisor. I'm also not a developer. So, take this with a grain of salt and do your own research. Now, look, check this out. There is a labor market in the world that affects the products we use. Products like cell phones or, the fast fashion industry. And what happens is that these factory workers are used to mine the raw materials needed for these products. Then they assemble them, then they make them functional, and they're not often paid a fair wage. They're paid next to nothing, to be honest with you. In the reality of things, the corporations that create the supply chains for these products give it to you for what they consider cheap, but are often making 60 to 80% of profit on the products. So in the end, the people trying to survive harsh working conditions and unfair wages end up competing against each other for the contracts that these companies dish out or spots for employment. And they sometimes have price wars to do so, but oftentimes this results in violent clashes or intimidation tactics in an effort to secure these contracts. So remember, it's like some of these people are supporting nieces, nephews, grandparents, parents, neighbors, aunties, uncles, children, daughters and whatnot, siblings, whatever. Um, and if they don't bring home the bread, that's a lot of people who are not going to get anything. So think about what you would do to support your family. If you're living in the U.S. or Europe, you may have some options to help you cope with hard times. But there are many people in the U.S. and Europe who don't have options to help them cope. They're forced to resort to drastic measures to keep food on the table and to keep the lights on. And it's a sad reality um, that they live in. It's just what it is. Now, many children, even here in America, to kind of talk about it a little bit more, many children go to school here hungry because they know that that's the only place where they're going to get a meal, and they're not going to get any food at home. And there's a lot of contributing factors to that. But let's see if we can use blockchain to make sure people are getting paid enough so that they don't have to beat you over the head or climb in through your window or sell drugs to your children, because when we try and solve these problems, we directly prevent new problems from occurring. And these derivative problems from the main problems, is the stuff that affects everybody the most. So let's try to tackle these main problems using blockchain. Let's see if we could do it. This is just a thought exercise, and see how we can structure smart contracts. But yeah, let's get it. So if you know nothing about blockchain, here is a brief summary of how it works. There is this digital ledger. It's just like a paper ledger. It keeps track of what's going in and what's going out, and you could think of the blocks on this digital ledger as pages, right? In a regular ledger, in a paper ledger. The computers that hold this ledger write transactions to the page, or in this case, the block, and then they use the encryption to seal the page or the block so that no one can write on it. Now, the inputs on that block have a date, time, and ID for the person who wrote that input in. That way, forever and ever, you can always go back and verify who created that input and what they did with it. The copies of this ledger are distributed amongst anyone who wishes to download it so that no one can change the ledger without everyone correcting each other's inputs. It's an important piece to understand. Okay, how can blockchain promote fair wages? First of all, we can use transparency on the blockchain to make sure all the agreements are on the up and up. So, like, let's say you're Starbucks, right? And your coffee is sourced from Brazil, among like hella other places. But you say you want to buy a metric ton of coffee beans for $1,000 in Brazil from a farmer. Now it might cost the grower on the farm $800 to grow 1 metric ton of coffee beans, because he's paying a salary to like 100 people a day, or day in day out, cost of fertilizer, water, etc. And now the farmer would take that price because it cost him $800, and with that $200 left over, he can live off of that for his for his family for the next 2 months, even though it might have took him 2 years to produce that product. That's because he doesn't have a better offer on the table at the time. Okay, and he also might have gotten this contract from some other farmer who wanted to charge you, Starbucks, $1,001 for the metric ton. But Starbucks plays hardball, and so now, what if the farmer knew Starbucks was going to make a profit of $20,000? Okay, $20,000 from that metric ton. Okay, what if he knew that that's the money that Starbucks was going to make? And I don't know if that's what they make. I have no idea. I'm just throwing that out there as a number, making an example here. But if he knew that, he might want to renegotiate, right? In fact, if he knew that there was that kind of profit in it, he might want to reach out to other coffee shops and say, hey, I'll get these beans to you at a good price. Let's talk. I want $2,000 per ton instead of $1,000, right? Because usually he was offering it for $1,000. He finds out they're making $20,000 off of this, and he goes and finds a coffee shop that's willing to buy it for $2,000. And the local coffee shop is getting chewed out by a large distributor who is collecting a hefty sum transporting the coffee. They're basically being Starbucks on a smaller level. But there's a transportation company who is actually transporting the coffee, and they're getting gypped by the distributor, because in the supply chains, the people that have access to the consumer's cash tend to call the shots. They tend to determine the price for whatever part of the supply chain that exists. Now, the farmer knows the guys who pick up the coffee and can talk to them, and the guys who pick up the coffee can talk to the company who puts it on the ship, and the shipping company knows the local coffee shops or the people that bring it to them. And everybody can has a communication line with each piece in the supply chain. Okay, all right. So where am I going with this, right? Now, after realizing how much money they were losing by dealing with a greedy middleman, they might want to keep things transparent to prevent that kind of greed from popping up again. Now, they could all create a smart contract on the blockchain to work or on the blockchain, like to work with everyone involved in the supply chain to create a transparent, fair contract for getting the coffee beans grown, and all, from grown, and then all the way from getting it grown to having it end up in a coffee shop, in somebody's coffee, or in a supermarket, right? And what's actually happening here is that having full knowledge of the gross revenue being generated, like, they don't have to trust it because it's a blockchain, it's trustless, right? So they have this full knowledge of what's happening, and they get a fair assessment of each leg of the supply chain. And each leg is also negotiating their own contract while having full knowledge of the gross revenue being generated, right? So the amount of fairness that's involved is to the maximum. Because let's say, the transportation hub wanted more money, they can argue that. And if the other people in the supply chain agree that, I didn't know how much went into transportation. Okay, let's all figure out how we can get John, the transporter, more money because he deserves it, or she deserves it, and so with all that transparency, everybody's able to work out a way for everybody to win, because that's what we really want to do. We want everybody to win. You don't have to give anybody anything, but you have to create an environment that's equitable, so that at least they have a fair shot at negotiating their rate, right? Okay, so what's the next level to this? Okay, check this out. What if all the farmers and their supply chains got together and existed on one blockchain, right? A company in Europe or North America or China or wherever could begin to shop the farmers, their distribution methods, and see with full transparency who they want to work with. And since everyone is on the blockchain and everyone is being transparent, Danilo can see that Felipe is charging $1,500 per ton of coffee. And Danilo knows that his coffee is superior to Felipe's, so he'll charge $1,700. Now, a coffee shop that prides itself on quality coffee, right, would rather get Danilo's coffee. But if price is more important, like let's say you're a diner or something, you might go for Felipe's coffee. Maybe Faustino's coffee ships once a week, but it's $2,000 a ton. But that might be worth it to the high volume coffee shop that's trying to pump this coffee out, right? And that's the benefit of having everything transparent on a blockchain, is that everybody can make the best information, the best decisions, with the most accurate information all the way around. All the way around. There's no big eyes, little U's, there's no winners and losers. Everybody wins. Right? And instead of because they know what's possible, they no longer sell themselves short, and instead of killing themselves for a low wage, they can get paid appropriately, spend their money in their country with other businesses, improve the quality of life for everyone participating in the economy, and begin to develop, at a faster rate. And this isn't socialism. It's capitalism, but with honesty, with transparency. The only way that they could pay slave wages is because workers and producers are kept in the dark, and they also have no way of collectively cooperating due mainly to trust issues. So if there was a transparent system that, also operated with a technology that allowed for everybody to not have to trust that system, that would be awesome. that provides like an atmosphere for fairness and equity, and an equity of pay. And then you don't have middle people who aren't really doing anything but pushing around paper, determining the low wages that are set on both ends, the low profit margins that are set on both ends of the spectrum, right? And so the other thing is, if you are that coffee shop owner or that supermarket, you only pay one bill. You just pay your end of the bargain into the smart contract. Everyone else gets paid. Everybody else gets paid instantly, and they get paid what they're supposed to get paid according to the contract. Right? And so, I think that this is a way you can apply this to fashion. You can apply this to cell phones. You can apply this to a lot of different industries, that have products that are being created in other parts of the world and shipped and profited upon by a large margin in first world countries. And this isn't socialism, it's capitalism. It's just honest capitalism, which I think we could use a lot more of. But yeah, man, I just came up with this within like 20 minutes just based on my understanding of the blockchain. Let me know what you think. Was I wrong? How could we do this better? How could this be improved upon? What's something that I'm not looking at? Just leave as many comments as you like below. Ask questions, whatever you want to do. But yeah, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And peace.